Welcome to the Voodoo Power Podcast. Welcome to Place of Pancakes. We're sitting down today with Phil Reichhoff. Coach Reichhoff is the Director of Strength Conditioning at Cape Henry Collegiate in Virginia Beach. At Cape Henry, Reichhoff created the school's first strength conditioning program with curriculum spanning from pre-kindergarten to grade 12. Prior to that, Coach Reichhoff worked as a strength conditioning intern for the Washington Wizards, where he was directly involved with the NBA organization, assisting with all elements of performance. Coach Reichhoff worked as graduate assistant strength conditioning coach at Virginia Commonwealth University. At VCU, he oversaw the development of track and field throwers, men's and women's tennis, and men's golf. During his time at VCU, he was a part of 6 Atlantic 10 conference championships across all sports. Coach Reichhoff started coaching at East Carolina University, assisting with the strength conditioning training of all 16 NCAA Division I athletic programs. He specifically worked most closely with ECU Football and Baseball, and both teams achieved national top 25 rankings multiple times. He has also worked and studied internationally at the Dutch Olympic Training Center, England, Ireland, and France. Reichhoff has a Master's of Education from VCU Center of Sports Leadership, a Bachelor's of Science in Health and Human Performance from East Carolina University, along with a minor in Sports Performance Enhancement from Hahn University of Applied Sciences. Coach Reichhoff is RSCC, CSCS, TPI Fitness Level 2, and USA Weightlifting certified. So welcome to the show, Coach.
Thanks for having me. Like I told you, I've been listening to the show for a long time. A lot of great coaches on, so I'm excited to be part of it. Thanks for asking me to come on.
Man, we're always looking for great coaches, and we've been friends on Instagram a while, and I've had time to go through some of the stuff you've wrote, and it just seemed like it was going to set up to be a really good podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited to get it going.
Now, going through some of your stuff, writing articles and coming up with ideas, you have quite a bit of stuff out there on some different sites, some short articles, some longer articles, different ideas you've bounced around. How were you able to kind of get yourself set up as a writer?
Yeah, it's a good question. It takes time, and I think the hardest part is coming up with ideas on what to talk about. I think we're so busy on the day-to-day and trying to solve problems that sometimes you don't know either what's worth sharing or just kind of zooming out and thinking about what might be able to help other coaches because you're trying to solve the problem that's right in front of you. So I think over the years, I always kind of enjoyed writing. I mean, all the way back to like high school and English was a stronger subject for me, and history and things like that. So and I've learned a lot from reading and listening to interviews like this one from other coaches. So wanting to kind of help the young coach that's out there that was like me. So I over the years trying to feel more confident sharing some concepts and not being worried about being wrong, and trying to take that leap has been a journey for sure. And I'm, it's a goal for 2025 to try to share some more about what we're thinking about, what we're doing. And really it develops great connections because you're able to talk to other coaches about what you're doing, what they're doing. And then, you kind of develop a learning network off of that. So it's been fun, and hopefully I can do a little bit more of it.
Well, there's a couple different ways we can go with that, but in there you said worried about being wrong. I think sometimes that we let other people's opinion of what right or wrong is kind of dictate where we go with what we're doing. How have you been able to kind of get away from that mold and just go ahead and put your stuff out there? Whether it be criticized or loved, you're able to handle that.
Yeah, I think for a young coach, that's a challenge, to even with writing your program to say, this is what I think that we should do for the next 3, 6, 9 weeks, or this is what I think you should do in this session. And obviously, at different levels, probably the higher level you go, the more eyeballs you have on what your sessions look like. And you have to, I think it's really beat into our heads as coaches that you have to have an explanation for everything that we do. And we use that as a guiding light in our principles to say there's not I think it helps with buy-in with the kids where, I tell them there's not a single exercise up here that we're doing for no reason. Even the bicep curls or the fluff exercises or whatever, we're doing that for a reason. We want you to feel good and look good and all the different things. So, I think that over the years, you feel more and more confident with your reasoning about why you're putting things in the program. But yeah, as a young coach, I definitely struggled a little bit with, you know, not wanting to mess up because I didn't want to mess the athletes up, but also not wanting to mess up because I didn't want to, look wrong or be perceived wrong or anything like that. And I think really at a certain point in my career, I realized that being yourself and being 100% true to what you think and believe is the only way you're going to succeed. I don't think if you try and be somebody else, either personality wise or programming wise, nobody succeeds that way. So I think at a certain point, I actually remember, the year that I was like, you know what, this year I'm going to do exactly what I think needs to be done. I'm going to speak the way I think I should be speaking. I'm going to program the way I'm going to do everything. And if it falls flat on its face, then I'll learn from it, or maybe this isn't for me, or whatever it might be. And things went better than what they were going before, when I was trying to kind of keep everybody happy, or be a little too safe. So yeah, I think that I've just kind of grown step by step on that. And I'm still in the process of doing it because both of us are active on social media, and you kind of cringe sometimes at the stuff that you share, but it's kind of part of the business, and it's overwhelmingly positive. And you just kind of have to have that irrational confidence sometimes to take the leap off the diving board and go for it. So yeah, it's a challenge for coaches, I think, but you just have to have ultimate confidence in yourself, and ultimate confidence in your ability to learn. That if you're wrong, that you can correct it. It's not a life sentence. So yeah, that would be my advice, and I'm definitely still in the growth process on that.
Posting on Instagram and social media, like you said, it is amazing to me. Sometimes I'll put a video up and I'll be like, I don't know if I should put that one up. It just ain't. There's something about it that's not quite right. But it looks good and it's a good idea. Let's just try it and see what happens. Sometimes those videos are the biggest success, and the ones you think, okay, this is awesome. This should really hopefully get out there and help people. They do nothing. So it's kind of crazy on what people gravitate towards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's some like some mentor friends, coaching friends of mine that are way deeper in social media than I am, and they'll tell you there's no recipe to the thing. It's not, like exactly like you said. I've heard from so many coaches where it's like my viral videos and the ones that flop. I put more time into the flops than I do the viral ones, and it's just there's no recipe to it. And I started my account when we started the program at Cape Henry because I wanted more kids to work out. I just wanted more participation. And I started in the summertime. So obviously no students on campus. And I just wanted them to be sitting at home on their couch and see on Instagram a video of their friend working out, or whoever doing a session, and go, oh, it doesn't look so bad. It looks kind of fun. Maybe I'll show up next Friday, or whatever the next session was. And hoping to just kind of get out there what we were doing, so that it wasn't just off in the weight room with the kids that I knew. So that's kind of how it started, was really just trying to build the program and build momentum. And I kind of joke, like, try to spread the good word, through what we were doing on my account. So that's how it started. And it's funny, I have kids ask me, hey coach, can you film my next set? Hey, can I get a shout out on the Instagram? Or, we've got a game this Friday. Can you share our start times or whatever? So the kids really like it. And the school really likes it because it's an opportunity for us to advertise what we're doing. And so yeah, it's been overall a success, but it definitely took a leap of faith. Matter of fact, I started the account under a different name because I didn't want my name on it, because I felt like I didn't want to be out there as much. It was about the program. And I think as coaches growing up, it's also a lesson that, it's not about us, and all that. And which is, there's definitely a lot of truth to that. But in the modern world of strength conditioning, personal training, you do have to kind of create a brand for yourself. So as I built more confidence, I kind of thought, okay, I need to put my name on this and make it my own, and kind of go a different route. So yeah, social media is a wild world, but I think it is kind of part of the business at this point. It's a living resume, and I think it's important for coaches to at least feel somewhat comfortable on there.
I would say we started with the same reasoning in mind. by no means am I a strength conditioning guru, but like you said, it was to get the kids out there so their parents could see what they were doing, so they could see their growth, to get some ideas and some feedback and get with other coaches where we could discuss some of these things. And then it worked out. I mean, I look back at some of them original videos and I'm like, holy cow, why did I film it that way? Why did I, it's pretty cringy, some of the stuff that we filmed, but you don't know any better when you start. You're just trying to get your kids out there and let them see the growth, bring other kids in. So I think we have a lot in common in that.
Yeah, and now it's come full circle because I've been there. This is my 5th school year. So I've graduated a whole class, now I'm kind of going back to the beginning with another class sort of. And I have kids in the weight room saying, hey, I saw a video you did years ago with this senior and I want to do that exercise. So it's like they've been following it for a while. And so, yeah, it's created almost like a good little echo chamber, like a positive echo chamber, in social media. A lot of times you have negative ones, but I think it's created kind of a positive one for us.
Now, we were talking about this pre-show, and before we get into your newest article, which I really enjoyed, we kind of hit on this. We lock ourselves kind of in our own little world, and we don't know what everybody else is doing, even though in a lot of cases we're all thinking the same. We're coming on to the same ideas, kind of like maybe Marconi and Tesla with the radio. When the telephone was invented, multiple inventors were coming up with the same time. And this would actually tie into social media too. Sometimes it's almost a race to get your idea out there. And then when you get it out there, you find out that all of a sudden, 10, 15 other coaches are seeing the same thing. So did you kind of see that develop in this last article?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've been working on the max effort cycle program system that we've been running, working on it for years, and taking a lot of pieces from different places. And I took some stuff from some previous stops I've been, and we kind of have created this Picasso of programming to create the system that we're running now. And when I put the article out, I got so much interaction and feedback from coaches that are doing some similar stuff, which I thought was so cool and encouraging for the same reason you're saying, in the high school strength world, a lot of time it's just you're by yourself and you're trying to solve problems as they come. And, you don't know necessarily what other coaches are doing. Now, platforms like yours and, the NSCA and the high school organization, they do a really good job of kind of pulling that curtain back. Social media with coaches that have their own presence do a good job pulling that curtain back so we can all learn from each other. But I did take for granted when I worked at different levels, having environments with a ton of coaches around me, and other strength coaches that have been other places. So they're bringing the concepts from their previous stops to where they're at now. And they all worked with other sport coaches that had other perspectives. And we had tons of sport coaches around campus and physical therapists and athletic trainers. And so you really had like this melting pot of ideas and concepts that everybody was learning from. And as a really young coach, obviously you're just soaking it all in. But when you go to the high school and it's just you and, you might have some sport coaches, I'm very lucky to have a good amount of sport coaches that I learn from. I love being on sidelines and in locker rooms because I learned so much from these coaches, how they communicate to their players, how they react after tough situations. I learned from the coaches. I learned from the kids. So, but at the high school, you don't have nearly the number that you do at a college or at a pro team. So it does create like this, like you're just in your own head with your own ideas. So it's been really cool putting the 8-5-3 system, kind of what we're calling it, out there and hearing that other coaches have been doing some similar stuff.
I recently sat down with Coach Loudon. I know you know him, and that is ironic how the show goes in waves. He was kind of bringing up some of those ideas too. Fast forward, a couple days, your article comes out. You've got the same ideas, so it's pretty cool that I can have a couple coaches that are thinking the same, and then we can expand on these ideas. Now, like you said, 8-5-3, the article was an adaptation of 5-3-1 and kind of how you're implementing it where you are. When you had stumbled on the 8-5-3, it was to gain volume for your throwers, I believe, if I read the article correct. What led you to believe that your throwers were needing more volume?
Yeah, so at VCU, when I was working with our throwers, one unique thing about track and field is they really want to be at their best like one or two times a year. So we were able to have a really long build-up phase. The coach kind of explained to me early in my career, my time working with them was, a lot of these meets are like organized practice. We're just trying to hit certain benchmarks so that we can build to our conference meet and, hopefully qualify for, national, level meets and things like that. But ultimately, um, you know, everything beyond that is just organized practice. So that said, our in season lifts early in the season don't need to be what you and I think of football, basketball, baseball in season lifts. Like we can really, we need to build strength and we need to work up to this endpoint. So that gave us a really long runway. Most sports don't have that sort of runway. So I also did kind of an assessment of the team, and I thought their absolute strength was way too low. We had a record board in the weight room, and baseball owned the entire record board. Now we don't. This was at Virginia Commonwealth, so there's no football. And I thought to myself, these throwers should be the strongest kids on campus. I mean, the no football team. So yeah, baseball are going to be some strong boys too, but we need to have some of our names up there. I mean, this is our strength numbers are too low. So knowing that we had a long runway and we could survive some soreness and we could do some weeks of higher volume, we came to the understanding that we need to probably lay a foundation of volume to build kind of the base for our absolute strength now later on. Now we did not do the cycles of eights at VCU. What we did do though is we took traditional 5-3-1, which spends a week in fives, a week in threes, and then it's time to kind of get to your singles. We expanded those to 3 weeks. So we would do 3 weeks in his fives with your top set at 85%. And then we would do 3 weeks of threes, top set at 90%. And then you would do your, work up to a heavy single. And so it was what we changed at VCU was we expanded 5-3-1 from a 3 week cycle to a 3-6-9 week kind of semester long training cycle. And then, we put our high volume stuff with the fives, kind of moderate volume with the threes as far as accessories go, moderate volume with the threes. And then when we were in that ones cycle, it was a lot of French contrast, post activation, potentiation sort of circuits in that last 3 weeks. And worked out really nicely because then we would hit a break and we'd go home for Christmas. And we just maxed out and the kids were primed and ready to go. And then it worked out really well again for outdoor championships in the spring because we came back from Christmas and we had another 9 week build up to be able to hit that kind of stuff. So that's kind of like a 10,000 foot view of how we expanded 5-3-1 at VCU. And then at the high school, we kind of adapted it from there.
That's pretty cool to listen to you talk about it. So by doing this, you're setting the stage where you can control the peak. Hopefully, that's the end all goal. I would imagine that you can have them in the best shape when they need it, and by allowing these longer 3 week cycles, then you can cut one short if you need to, or whatever the case may be, however it falls. But through that, now with what you're doing, you've added VBT in. So you're looking at velocities, where back then was it just percentage based?
So for 5-3-1, it was percentage based. And now with our 8-5-3, that phase of the program is still percentage based. So our top set for our eights is at 75%. And then our top set at fives is at 85. And then our top set at threes is at 90. So that stuff is still percentage based. Kind of going back to the stuff we did at VCU, like I felt 1 week didn't really allow you to build strength in that rep range. I think that especially athletes that aren't lifters, throwers are probably the closest to lifters as in the athletic world there is, but they're still not used to these rep ranges. You need to kind of learn, like the first week you do threes, that weight feels like 1,000 pounds. It's a whole different approach when you're doing, right now we're in a phase of eights at Cape Henry and it's like cardio for these kids, but that first week of fives is going to be a readjustment because it's a different rep range. So I felt like expanding it allowed us to actually get good at fives and set uh, um, a more accurate max off of those fives or eights or whatever it might be. And then that would set us up for the next cycle. So the way we did velocity based work at VCU within our expanded 531 also. What's changed a little bit is at Cape Henry, we started with a level 2 program that kind of was for everybody. But then we had kids starting, so we needed an entry level program. And then we had the kids advancing, so we needed a higher level program. So if you fast forward 5 years, now we've got a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3 program. So I didn't necessarily feel when I first got there that the kids were strong enough to need velocity based training, because I just didn't, we're a non-football school, which I think is important to kind of set the scene, because that drives a lot at a lot of schools. But the size of our kids and the strengths of our kids just wasn't up to what I thought was strong enough. So we spent some years getting strong enough, and then those kids kind of got to a point where I thought we needed to now work a different phase, a different quality. We did plyometrics, but we didn't really do any loaded plyometrics or anything like that. So yeah, we've added VBT in this year to our highest level program. And it's actually trickled a little bit into our level 2 program also. And basically throughout the week, we look to have a max effort lift, so use the squat because it's easy. On Monday, we'll have a max effort squat where we follow our 8-5-3 cycles. On Wednesday, we'll have a dynamic effort squat. So we box squat, barbell box squat, and it's a kind of a pause box squat. So we're not tap and go, but you're cutting the counter movement out of the bottom, and we attach our Vitruve encoders up to those bars. And that's our dynamic effort. I know dynamic effort is a really specific definition, but that's kind of what we call dynamic effort. And then on Friday, we have a repeat effort double leg exercise, which could be anything: goblet squat, landmine squat. It's really just a dealer's choice. So we try to map the week out where we have a max effort, a dynamic effort, and a repeat effort for all of our primary lifts. And just the Rubik's Cube of that is trying to do that on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday sort of setup. So kind of rambling a little bit there, but that's kind of how we're starting to integrate. 8-5-3 is our max effort rep cycle. And then we have a dynamic effort rep cycle. And then we have a repeat effort rep cycle. And then all of those are kind of functioning together.
Taking some of Louis Simmons' ideas back to the high school with hitting the 3 cycles.
Exactly right. Yeah. And that really came from my time in East Carolina with Jeff Connors. It was a lot of similar stuff that we did with him. And he was, had a lot of Louis in his program. And we've only implemented this after 5 years of trying to get the kids good enough at movement, strong enough, bought in enough, all the different elements you have to check, because they definitely weren't ready for it. And I don't know if I was ready for it when I first got there. So I think, we've built on it. And now, like I said, we're starting to kind of integrate that sort of concept on all 3 levels, just so they can prepare for the next level, a little kind of vertical alignment with our programming. But yeah, definitely inspired by some of the West Side concepts.
So I have stumbled onto some of what you're saying. I didn't use velocity for a while. I still don't use velocity on our max effort work, but I did find out on our dynamic effort work, like you said, it's amazing to use because they're outrunning, especially female athletes. And you point this out in your article, especially female athletes. They get so strong so fast once they find the weight room that they're outrunning their percentages all the time. So if you've got velocity on there, you can check a couple of things. You can make sure that the weight's correct for the speed you want, and you can also judge their work capacity. If the speed's dropping off, let's say you're doing 10 sets of 3 on your dynamic squat, well, if the last 3 sets are really dropping in speed, well, the work capacity is not quite there yet. Is that kind of, in a nutshell, what you'd found?
It is. We don't do any velocity tracking on our max effort stuff, like you said. The way that we kind of auto regulate for that fast progression is with our are as many as possible sets on our last set of our max effort work. So to go back to the squat example, you'll do on a cycle of eights, you'll do 4 sets of 8, but your last set is as many as possible at 75%. And really, we use Team Builder, and in order for your numbers to go up, you need to do 10 reps. And if you do 10 reps, your numbers will go up 5 pounds, and you'll kind of progress that way. And we have kids that will come in on their first week of eights and do 15. Well, their number's not right. And that's why having the integration between kind of the 5-3-1 skeleton plus the concept of APRE, where your performance is dictating your weight, I think is super important. And I think obviously much of the research tells us we need to be between 1 and 3 reps of failure to really feel, to really get some progress. So that's what we're aiming for. Now, whether you're feeling good that day and you do 12, or you're not feeling good that day and you do 6, you're still getting within, a rep or 2 of failure, so that you're getting that muscle recruitment that we need. Because if we just said 75% is 75% no matter what, and we need you to do 8, we could be really limiting your potential growth by telling you have to do 8 reps. Kids will come in after a break and say, yeah, I'm not feeling so good. I lost some weight over a break. I didn't work out. I'm like, just do as many as you can. See how you feel. And the numbers will reset. And then we'll continue on with the quote unquote new you, and maybe the new you is a 15 rep, person, or maybe it's a 6 rep person and we need to bump your max down 10 pounds. And, there's no hurt in that. And a lot of times when that happens, they'll come in the next week, they'll do 15, and then they'll be back up. And I find by the 3rd week of our cycle, they're pretty much right. That point, their percentage is accurate. But the first 2 weeks is a lot of discovery. And I think it also allows us to enter new kids in the program whenever they want to. Because if I have a kid show up in the last week of eights, not ideal. Last week of a cycle, not a great time to start. But in our program, you can just start them and say, hey, look, start with the empty bar, add 5 to 10 pounds each set. I want on your last set to aim to do something like 10 reps that's challenging. So just figure out what feels good as your sets are going. And then we'll do an AMAP set, as many as you can. And then boom, you've got your working maxes to come in next week and you're ready to go just like everybody else. So it makes it a really flexible, kind of adaptable program that I think at the high school level is just so important.
What you said in there makes a lot of sense. It seems to me that it does take 3 weeks for the muscle coordination and everything to happen. And I talked about it before. We run a reverse 5-3-1. So we're kind of figuring out where their 95% is off the top. Well, by the time you get, and we just run in week waves. So by the time you get to that 3 week, well, now they're hitting their max for 3 reps. And it seems like it takes those 2 weeks to get there. And so maybe I wasn't seeing it as crazy as I thought I was listening to you talk about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you think about it, put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's never lifted weights before. That first week is just learning what the barbell is. And for us, we have iPads that we use Team Builder on. So how to enter your weights and, what does reverse lunge mean and, where the dumbbells are and everything. So that's just a week right there. And then you've got your second week where now you've got your feet wet a little bit and you can do the workout, maybe push yourself a little bit. And by week 3, the vocab, the technology, the movement patterns. So week 3, now you're really getting after it. And now you're ready for the next cycle where you can really jump in, full force. So yeah, I think the 3-week cycles worked really well for us. Another thing, I took from East Carolina, because we did, 3-week mini cycles there. And that was something that was really important to us. So I kind of started my belief in it there. And it also works out really well with the school calendar. We have a lot of days off. And I take the year-long calendar when it comes out in August, and I mark 1, 2, 3, and then I draw a line with a highlighter. 1, 2, 3, line with a highlighter. And then I have my whole year mapped out. And we have some times where we do a 4th week because it's a little awkward with Thanksgiving break coming. I don't want to start a new cycle and take the next week off. So we'll go a 4th week on something from time to time, or like you mentioned earlier, we'll cut a week off Like we only did 2 weeks of threes before Christmas. If I had to sacrifice a week, I'd rather sacrifice the week on threes than sacrificing the week on eights. Just because I think with young athletes, I'm just becoming a believer in volume. So we kind of err on the side of more reps than less, but it does create a really flexible deal for us. And for these kids that have such busy schedules, if they miss a day or miss a week, they're not super behind.
And that article gets into that. It gets into hypertrophy and volume on the younger athlete. It it creates a lot of growth if you can get that in there. And then, like you said, you're hitting strength a little bit later. But if you're not peaking and you're just trying to build an athlete over a long cycle, the hypertrophy may carry over better, especially early on.
Yeah, and everything we're doing is over the long term, because these kids, I want them to be at their absolute best, whatever their most important season is, senior year. I want them to feel their best in the state championship of their senior year. So, and I tell kids that, we have a game day adjustment, kind of an in-season adjustment that we do, but I really try to keep that for high minute players, 10th grade and up, because outside of that, if you're sore in your JV game, I'm not that worried about it. I don't want you to get injured. I don't want to make you so sore that you're susceptible to some injuries. But on the other hand, I mean, this is all about long-term growth and development. So, yeah, I find the high volume just from a motor learning standpoint, from a hypertrophy standpoint, and then honestly, from a little bit from a safety standpoint, I think it's harder for kids to hurt themselves with light weights. Probably you and I, it's easier to get hurt with light weights because we're doing a lot of reps and it adds up. But for a young person to load up the bar really heavy, that's kind of driving a car fast. And these kids need to be taking laps around the parking lot, and I think when you have lower percentages, it kind of lowers the possibility of trying to just grip it and rip it and trying to get the weight up. So, and then the last prong that I think has sold me on the higher reps is the buy-in, because these kids want to leave feeling pumped up, and a set of 15 is going to pump you up a lot more than a set of 3. And as much as science is a part of our job, sales is part of our job too, because almost everything I do is voluntary. And if my kids don't leave feeling, like a puffer fish and feeling a little bit tired and like, man, that was a good workout. No matter what scientific reasoning we have to do 10 sets of one, they're going to go, yeah, I didn't even sweat. That wasn't even hard, So now as they get older, as my levels progress, we do more traditional strength training and our VBT work and our sets of one and, cluster sets and all this, because they have an understanding and they have a absolute strength that those workouts are challenging, obviously. But when you take a kid that's never worked out before, they're going to believe in a set of 12 sooner than they believe in a set of 3. I find, at least with 8th, 9th graders and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of been my approach to kind of a volume based program. And it seems to be going okay for us so far.
Now, you had talked about your singles week or your singles cycle. So it'd be 3 weeks of your heavier weights. You run a French contrast. While doing that, are you looking at velocity of like trap bar jumps, ground contact times? How are you evaluating the progress in the contrast side?
Yeah, so we don't necessarily get to singles. We'll do a cycle of threes, so it's at 90%, which sometimes turns to a single, because their 90% isn't really 90%; it's 100. But I've also had kids do fives on sets of 3 because it's so it gets adjusted. So yeah, during that cycle of threes, we do the French contrast circuit that works for us in our space. It's not really like necessarily traditional in order, but we do the heavy, we do the body weight, we do a light resisted plyo, and then an assisted plyo, and we normally do those supersetted. So we'll do our heavy and our body weight together, and then we'll do our low percentage and assisted together as a secondary block after we finish, let's say, squatting. So we actually track VBT progress at every cycle. So to kind of look at what we do from a velocity-based standpoint. So if you take our trap bar jumps, for example, what we do is we spend 3 weeks when we're doing our highest volume cycle. So when we're doing our eights, it's our heaviest VBT phase because we want these two cycles to run in opposites. So when we're doing our heaviest squatting, we want it to be our lightest VBT work. So we do 3 sets of 3 at around 60% for our VBT work during our eights. 3 sets of 4 at about 40% during our 40% during our sets of 5. And then 3 sets of 5 at about 30% during our threes. And these get obviously progressively lighter and progressively faster as the cycles continue. So the hard part about it a little bit is we don't have the time to let kids force profile themselves where they do reps until they hit the speed zone. You know, we did that at other places where it's okay, start at 135, and when you hit the speed we want, now you count your sets. Everything before that was just kind of discovery. We don't really have the time to do that. So what we've done is we've kind of taken an average and said, okay, on trap bar jumps, our highest level program is going to do 3 sets of 3 at 185. And then next, they'll do that for 3 weeks. The next 3 weeks, they'll do 135. And the next 3 weeks, they'll do 95. And we adjust it on the fly. Sometimes I see 185 moving at the speeds I want it to. Other times I don't. And I'll tell kids, hey, you know, for you, I want you to do it at 135 because maybe you have a lower body weight than some other people. So it's not an exact science. It's probably not as dialed in as it's going to be, as we want it to be. But that's kind of how we've been working our VBT along with our max effort stuff. I'm not sure if it was kind of rambling, if that made any sense, but that's kind of how we've been doing it.
Now you were talking about assisted resisted, and I know you've worked with a lot of throwers. Have you seen that beneficial in your plyometrics, assisted resisted in your throwers?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, the assisted plyo, we do band assisted pogos. That's like one of the most transferable exercises that I've ever done, man. I mean, the first, I've had so many kids dunk for the first time after doing a French contrast cycle with assisted pogos in there. I think it's an ability to get off the ground. It's a confidence thing because they're floating way higher than they would. So it encourages them to jump harder and jump higher. And the magic of that contrast, obviously there's tons of research and science out there that people can dive into, but there is something a little bit magical about that contrast once you can really dial it in, especially with some really athletic people, like throwers are typically some of the most athletic people on campus, just really, really twitchy. And when you take somebody like that, you know, the easiest example I give kids, it's like swinging a baseball bat with a donut on it, you know, and then you take the donut off and the bat feels so much lighter. That's what we're doing with their bodies. And you know, when I go in for our varsity basketball game this afternoon, we'll do a French contrast circuit before they go out for on-court warm-ups. The same reason why a baseball player puts the donut on their bat before they get in the box. So yeah, I couldn't encourage it more. And I think you could probably do it with some kids with early training ages also, just to teach intent and teach explosiveness and teach the mind muscle connection it takes to fire all muscles on all cylinders. So I really think the French contrast can be beneficial to a lot of different levels.
Now using VBT, and I know you talk about it a little bit in your article, with the time you have, are you able to use that a little bit as an auto-regulatory system? Are you kind of able to either push the intent or the weight a little bit higher or kind of back them off on those bad days?
Yeah, we have done that in the past, and that's kind of how we started with VBT. What I found, though, was it was a lot of trial and error because if I say, you know, hey, guys, we're going to try to do 40% today for 3 sets of 4, and they're not hitting the speeds that we want, it takes a lot of time to get us in the speed zone that we want to be into. And we're trying to also get to our accessory stuff afterwards. You know, we talked about kind of our belief in repetition. So we want to get our reps in and our accessory work afterwards, whether that be lunging or single leg work or dumbbell presses or whatever it might be. So we don't want to eat up the whole session with our max effort. And because if we're doing 4 sets of 8 and then we have to find our speed zone on our next exercise and we have 45-minute, 50-minute sessions, that can almost take the whole period. So I think we do most of our auto regulatory work using our AMAP sets on our max effort stuff. And then with our VBT, I've been prescribing a weight for that cycle that they need to stay at. And then they're trying to move that thing as fast as they can that day. And whether that means they move it at 1.0 meters per second on this Monday, next Monday it's at 0.9, and the third Monday they're at 1.5. It's the intent and the immediate feedback that I think is the lowest hanging fruit for VBT. And it's teaching kids how to move weight with max intent, because I think they're really used to doing reps. Probably in our program too, they do a lot of reps, so they're used to just kind of like grinding through the sets and getting the reps. But it's a different mentality to take something that you can easily lift and move it as fast as humanly possible. But when we think about transfer to sport, that's more applicable, because my track and field, my throws coach I worked for at VCU, he told me everything's heavier than a shot put. The shot put isn't that heavy. So if they can move 65 pounds really fast, they're going to throw the heck out of that shot put. So I think, it's more applicable to sport, probably to train that intent. So as much as I like the concept of auto regulatory, using VBT for auto regulation, I just find it eats up our whole bell and it's taking too much time. So we're really getting the juice out of the immediate feedback and teaching intent. And the competition is so much fun to watch, man. It's like I move it at 1.2 and they're like, get out of there, I want to try, so it's cool. The competition and the immediate feedback probably is our biggest benefit of VBT.
That's funny you kind of bring that up. That's what I've slowly stumbled on for our dynamic days. So they find a weight. The deadlift's a little different. The deadlift will go to 0.4 to start out with, just because there's no eccentric really to it. But our squat and our bench press will set at 0.6. That's your weight. You're staying at that weight until it moves at 0.85, 0.9, and then we'll drop it back down. And then as we're peaking, we want them speeds to go up. I found it does save an incredible amount of time. It helps because, like you said, you're not dealing with percentages. You're dealing with an accurate number of where you want them. And then it also creates competition, because you're not getting away from that weight until you hit the speeds that we want to see. So there's a race to get higher in weight by every kid. Now their intent seems to be a lot better.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm actually working on a follow-up article about our VBT program, and it's really centered on the concept of intent, and trying to move things as fast as possible. Kids just developmentally struggle with kind of that mind-muscle connection. The neurological connection to their muscle to fire at all cylinders. So I think teaching that is a skill. We're just trying to not to get too into the science of it, but it's really building the synapse in our brain to be thick cables, like a underwater internet connection. We need that thing to be really, really connected, so that when we're on the field or the court, when we decide to go, we can go. Because I think we've all seen athletes where we can see the decision being made, and then it takes a second for it to happen. But I think by doing things connected to a VBT device, it teaches them to say, okay, when I pull this trigger, everything goes in my direction as fast as I humanly possibly can. And that's the kind of stuff I think transfers, because coordination is more than just a movement. It's also speed of movement and aggression of movement. And I think that beyond just movement patterns, we also, need to teach kind of that impulse. So it's been really good for us just teaching impulse alone.
And it's a way you can gamify compensatory acceleration. It takes that idea and moves it into the modern world where these kids understand it a little better.
Well, two things off of that. One, we started without VBT devices, and we would do, the same percentages and box squat, just as an example. But the concept of moving, having a bar, let's say I'm a 300-pound squatter and I've got tens on each side of my bar now, and I want you to do sets of 3. They're like, what is this? What am I doing? This is not hard, And so, but putting a device on there has totally changed the exercise. Now they understand exactly why they're doing it, and they're trying to chase something. Is a faster number. Where previously, when you start lifting weights, the only thing is more weight or more reps but to be able to give them something to chase that says move this thing faster. That's why buying the Vitruve encoders was a must for us, because we couldn't get the buy-in or the belief or the intent in our VBT work without an actual VBT device to chase after. So yeah, that's been really, really big for us.
Before we move on to another subject, the link to your article is in your bio on Instagram. If anybody wants to go on there, find it, look at it, it should be easy to find that way. That's kind of how I found it.
Yeah, and if anybody has trouble getting to it, obviously, you can reach out to me or DM me, and I can send it to you.
Okay. Well, I didn't want to just go off and onto another subject without at least telling people where they could find it.
Yeah, thanks.
Now, digging back through some of your older stuff that was on, this may have been on Beehive or the Stack, something. I can't remember exactly where it is, and you may know. But the summer and its importance to athletes. That is, now I know with competition sports, some kids' summer is not the same as others. But the ones that can take advantage of the summer work, how crucial is that to the development of strength and skill?
It's the longest uninterrupted training phase of the year. I mean, it's 3 months with, now we have 2 holidays. We have July 4th and Juneteenth are 2 days that we're closed on campus, government holidays. So compared to the academic school year, there's a lot more breaks during the academic year. We just had 2 weeks off for Christmas. Well, we had a week off for Thanksgiving. We have a week off for spring break. Martin Luther King Day is Monday. So for a program that trains 3 days a week, a Monday off is a big deal because it kind of limits our week to 2 days. So, but in the summertime, we still train 3 days a week, but there's almost no interruptions. We changed our program where we're now going to lift Monday, Tuesday, Thursday in the summertime because we know a lot of kids are out of town on Fridays. And we want to meet them where they're at, and participation is the number one predictor of success, so we need them to show up. And so we try to create a schedule that was easy for them to participate in. But from a growth standpoint, nothing I don't think is more important than the summer. And I think it also lays the foundation of habits that you can continue during the school year. Our 7 a.m. workout group is the most consistent year round. We have it 12 months a year. And a lot of those kids build those habits by showing up in the summer at 7. And then it's not as hard to show up at 7 during the school year. I think also there's the ability to raise your workload threshold is really important. So if you're able to work out 3 days a week all summer, well, then if you need to cut it back to 2 during, your fall sports season, then it's okay because we have this huge base that we built all summer. You actually have something to maintain. But if you're just trying to start during the school year, there's just so many variables at play that is just really hard to dedicate yourself during the academic year. We have a school that has a lot of multi-sport athletes also. So, it's a grind during the school year. We're a pretty high academic school. We got kids that play 3 sports, that are involved in extracurriculars, that have above a 4.0, that are just super busy. And it's hard to be really consistent. So if they can lay a foundation in the school year, then we can live those peaks and valleys. If they can build a foundation during the summer, then we can live those peaks and valleys during the school year. But I just find it so hard once the hamster wheels of the year starts rolling. I mean, it's just really hard to make a lot of changes, And then, like you said, from a skill development standpoint, it's one of the only times of the year where you can probably work on your skills by yourself. Now summer travel, baseball and basketball and all the sports are really, really important during the summer, for these kids to try to get exposure and get better. But if a kid is able to really maximize those 2.5, 3 months in summer, they can come back a totally different person.
Yeah, it's the time of year that you can explore some Bonder Chuckish ideas where you can hit your weight room in the morning and then you can go work on your competitive exercises in the afternoon. You can expand your role on the team. I think your article kind of touches on you can maybe work out in different spots you didn't work out in before because you have a role on a team. Well, now if you can practice some other spots, if something happens, your value has increased.
Yeah, exactly right. And that schedule is what we try to create at our school. I coordinate with our sports coaches their off season practice times, and we try to make it so that kids only have to come to campus once, and they'll do their on field or on court work, and then they'll come to me or vice versa, however the schedule works. And so we're trying to just create a place where they can come up and they can train for a few hours, 3 days a week, and then go play with their club or travel team on the weekend, and just create an environment where the summertime they can just make they progress by leaps and bounds.
You got deep into another article on front squats and the importance of building the front squat. What led you down that rabbit hole a little bit? I know, we talked about Toby Jacoby down there, that you worked with him some and you listened to his. I know he's big on the front squat. Is that something you picked up at ECU, or is it something you guys kind of stumbled on independently? How'd that work?
Yeah, so it's funny you say that because we've actually made a change a little bit. So I'll kind of go full circle on the whole squat thing. So yeah, when I got to Cape Henry, I was really firm that we were gonna front squat only. We were gonna goblet squat and then we were gonna front squat. Was kind of our plan. And I did get a lot of that from Toby. So yeah, Toby and I were at East Carolina, but we did very little front squatting at East Carolina from my memory. Um, but like he mentioned in the podcast with you, we had seen some lower back issues, especially kids coming into school with lower back issues. And then when I got to Cape Henry, the two biggest injuries that I see are, growth related knee pain, Oscar sliders type stuff, and then lower back issues. Now, a lot of that is growth related, and then obviously sports that are super rotational. When you're growing and violently rotating, it can be kind of a hard combination. But I just didn't want there to be any sort of you can never get hurt in the weight room, because if you want people to keep coming in, you can't get hurt in our room. We're an add-on, people can play sports without us. So I don't ever want to be the reason why you're not on the field or on the court. So, I didn't want to take a risk with an exercise that we've all seen really ugly stuff happen with. I mean, we can all probably picture in our mind right now a pretty ugly, dangerous, scary back squat. But with the front squat, it's hard to have a dangerous front squat. I mean, yeah, it might not be optimal, but you're probably going to drop it. You're probably not going to be able to stand up with it if you're having really atrociously bad form. With the back squat, you can kind of do a good morning and stand up with it and whatever, and probably, bang yourself up pretty good trying to do it, but you can stand up with it. Where a front squat is almost self-limiting, which I really liked about it. The other thing that I liked about it was, kind of the stability, mobility continuum. So if you look at your lower, start with your ankles, you want mobile ankles, stable knees, mobile hips, stable core, mobile shoulders, stable elbows, mobile wrists. So it kind of goes in opposites as you move throughout the body. And when you look at the front squat, it promotes all of those different mobilities and stabilities. You need to have mobile ankles, need to have mobile hips, need to have a strong core, work on your shoulder mobility, your wrist mobility. So I liked how it checked a lot of boxes that way. The last element that I thought was kind of finally sold me on the front squat is that it's harder than back squatting. You know, very rarely are you going to have somebody that front squats more than they back squat. The back squat's probably going to be able to handle more load. So what I liked about it was I felt that if we had a kid that was a really good front squatter, when they went to the rec center or when they went to go play college sport or lift on their own, and they wanted to load up a back squat, they were going to be able to do it safe and do it well and probably be pretty darn good at it. So that was my three big selling points on the front squat. And we front squatted at Cape Henry all the way up until this winter. And we still are front squatting, but we made a change and put in the back squat with our highest level program for a few reasons. One, the depth, oddly enough, wasn't what we were liking with the front squat. I think that we had some mobility issues with this group of kids we have right now. And like I said, this is my 5th year, so it's kind of like some kids start with me and they went all the way through graduation. So I don't want to say I'm restarting because obviously we've got fresh, sophomores and juniors in there too, but they're just, every group is different. And I think this group had some mobility issues that were really hard to work around, especially in their ankles and in their wrists and in their shoulders. So it was really hard for them to get into proper positions. So we weren't happy with our depth on front squatting. So we were trying to go at it with a bunch of different angles, supersetting mobility, things like that. And then my assistant that we hired, Tori Ryan, she kind of brought to my attention, we try to make ourselves a posterior chain focused program. So everything that we do, not everything that we do, but the heart of our program is the posterior chain from the top of your neck to the bottom of your Achilles. And her point to me was, if that's our belief, then does front squat work to that belief? Because we're protracting our shoulders, a position that our kids spend a lot of time in on their phone and on their computer. We're not getting the upper back development that we would probably get out of back squatting. We're not getting the glute development. We're not getting the lower back development. We're not getting the hamstring development out of it. So are we really training the posterior chain as much as we think we are by front squatting? So all that to be said is we made the change with our highest level program that they would back squat on their max effort day. And it's been really, really good. The range of motion is better. I can see the total body development more than I can with the front squat in an odd way because of that, the bar position on our back versus the protracted position on our shoulders. Now our level 2 program, kind of our intermediate program, they still front squat. And then our entry level program will landmine squat and goblet squat. So we are still developing a foundation of upright torsos, some knees over toe action, a lot of range of motion. So I think that feeds in well to our back squat because then by the time they're at our level 3 program, they're really good front squatters. So then when we put the bar on their back, they want to squat it like a front squat. And I think it comes, if the needle can swing one way or the other, I think it comes almost to the middle on that level 3 program where they're not Olympic lifting squatting, with a super upright torso, but they're also not powerlifting squatting with like shoulders over knees, low bar kind of action. So, it's been kind of an evolution in the program. And I will say one thing I'm proud of as a program is that we weren't married to an exercise. All these things are menu options that we can just choose from. It's like if you and I went to lunch together, we might choose different things, but we'd all leave full. So I think that we can choose different exercises for different people and not be married to them. So I am kind of proud of our kids for embracing the change. So that's kind of my full front squat, back squat story.
Well, let me dig into that a little bit more. I know we've been going for a while and you got to get to basketball games, but I would like to touch on some stuff in there because it opened up some questions for me. So developing that front squat, you get a forward torso. And so I'm starting to notice this in the back squat a little bit, and I see where the benefit could happen. If they come into that box squat and their torso's too upright, they almost get stuck, especially coming out of the hole. And then what you'll see happen is if they do get off the box, their butt will shoot back and they'll put themselves in a position of a forward chest before the squat comes up. So if you create that forwardness in the front squat, have you noticed athletes better out of the hole and holding positions better coming off of a box?
Yeah, the box has been a really great teaching tool, and that's why we like it as our dynamic effort lower body lift for the week. And we do it with level 1 and level 2 programs. And it's just been a great teaching tool because with the box, one issue we had with the front squat was we had no weight on our heels, too much weight on our toes to the point where, we're not, a cascade of issues. We could probably list maybe 10 issues with being too forward with our weight transfer on our squat. So the box squat has been really nice to be able to teach kids to kind of push their hips down and back, almost at that acceleration 45-degree angle. And then the pause on the box has been really great with the light weights, very light loads for the VBT, because they can kind of assess where they're at down there. They can feel the weight transfer on their feet. They can feel their forward lean on their torso. Or am I too forward? Am I too upright? All of that. And then when they decide to go, they can explode off the box. Teaching them to be really tight on the box, like I tell them the most uncomfortable you should be is when you're on that box. And I think it teaches them then when we go to our max effort day where we have the counter movement out of the bottom, no box included. They're learning to kind of load the bow and arrow on the way down and then shoot it on the way up with that same sort of tight tension. So the box has been a really, really good teaching tool. And we've even told some kids that really struggle with front squat depth in particular, for our level 2 kids, I want you to squat to a box every day. So you're going to front squat to the box with light weights with the Vitruve encoder on our VBT day. But then on our max effort squat days, I want you to squat to the box. And that would be more of like a depth check box as opposed to like a traditional box squat where you sit and then come back off. So I don't want them bouncing on the box, but it's, like I said, it's kind of like a touch and then a go. But the box, we use 12-inch boxes, and then with different heights, you could put a plate on top of it or wherever they might need. But we want, the hip crease to be below the knee for all of our squats. But the box is a really great teaching tool, just to learn, they struggle with learning their self in space, proprioception, your body moving in space. And I think sometimes it's not that they don't have the mobility to get down there. They just don't know where they are. So by placing a box there and setting a goal, it grooves the pattern. So yeah, I would really encourage coaches, if you're having trouble with any form of squatting, to get a low box involved that's below parallel. And it's amazing. Then when you pull the box away, they're really grooved up in that pattern.
The one thing I've noticed with it, and you touched on it there, when they pause there for a second to regroup themselves, seems like I'm running into more and more squatters that have a deficiency in one leg. So they'll have a hip shift in there. But if you put them on a box and you put that pause in there, they can get their knees set and come up as even as possible. Where if they go too fast, or sometimes in that free squat, they'll shift over their dominant leg, and then it's pretty much a single leg exercise at that point. The box does allow them time to get everything set to come up off of it.
Yeah, it's a great teaching tool for so many reasons. And it slows it down for the lifter. It slows it down for the coach. We're able to watch details on the box that you can't in real time. Yeah, so it's been that has been a big addition to our program that has really, really helped.
Okay, so before I let you go, we'll hit on one more thing that come from another one of your articles, and then you can enjoy the rest of your afternoon. But I've noticed this as I've trained more and more athletes. Eliminating the excess from your program, cutting the fat wherever you can, especially like you talked about, you got 45, 50-minute increments with kids. Any fluff is not going to benefit the athlete. So when you were trying to figure out where to cut the fat, where to shorten up the time, what kind of process was that for you to figure out what was not needed?
It is so hard. It is so hard. I'd say with programming, programming is one of the most fun parts of my job. I love making a plan and then seeing that plan work. So I love the process of writing programs. But man, there's so many qualities that we need to train. There's so many different qualities that these kids need to work on, not because they're so behind or anything, but just there's so much to get done. There's so much to get done, and it's like whack-a-mole a little bit. Like once you solve one problem, there's another. One big thing that I probably have some frustration with is I'll train a kid. He'll be big and strong and explosive and powerful. And then all I hear is, well, he needs to get more mobile. If he doesn't stretch more, he's going to get blah, blah, blah. I'm like, gosh, man, like we can't do it all. We can't do it all the time. And we have to prioritize, and so we try to find exercises that have the biggest bang for buck possible. And we try to train at a range of motion that checks a lot of boxes. So, from a mobility standpoint, full range of motion, full body strength training is our biggest mobility tool. Is it the best mobility tool? I don't know, but it's the one that for us, it checks the most amount of boxes, because if we're really mobile and really weak, that's not going to help us, so we need to find ways. Anytime we're looking at an exercise, it's like, okay, how many boxes can we check with this exercise? So, and again, my assistant's been really good with this, because sometimes I try to jam too much into a program because I'm naturally somebody that I feel like it's never enough. I always feel like there's something else we could be doing. But the buy-in side of things is really important also. So if I put 12 exercises on a sheet and they do them all at about 60%, or if we put half the amount of exercises, but they do them all like their life depends on it, we're going to get way more out of that situation. So, we are always trying to eliminate things from the program. And I don't say that like in a way where we're trying to cut back, but it's like we look at everything like, do we absolutely need to do this? Because if we don't, there's something else we need to do, and we'll replace it with that. So, some things that have fallen by the wayside a little bit, because of time, is direct mobility work. Direct core work has probably fallen off a little bit, and we replace that with some speed work, with some more traditional acceleration type stuff over on our basketball courts. I send a lot of mobility videos out to kids. A guy that's here locally that's pretty big on social media, Vernon Griffith. I send his videos out to our kids a lot to be able to do it on their own, because I feel like you can stretch on your own. You can't necessarily, squat, bench, and deadlift on your own. You kind of need us to coach you and give you your numbers and all the different things. So, I try to really empower them with things they can do on their own. And then our program needs to be really, really dialed in and sleek. My mom's family's from Montreal, from Quebec. So I grew up a Formula One fan, and I kind of garner some inspiration from their cars, because they can't have any wasted element at all. The weight of the car, the amount of gasoline that's in the car, everything is so precise to be as fast as possible. And I try to make our programs as sleek as an F1 car, because it's like we don't have the time to mess around with other stuff. So in the summertime, we do 90-minute sessions, which now the kids get the kitchen sink. They get everything that they need in those 90-minute sessions, which probably harkens back to what we were talking about earlier, how important the summer is. Because in the school year, we take our summer program and we chop everything down, just the studs, and then we follow that for the school year, because these kids are busy. They've got crazy schedules. We've got short bell periods, so we just got to do the meat and potatoes. And in the summertime, we can really say, okay, we can 90 minutes, we can do everything that we need: speed, strength, mobility, core. Our baseball guys do arm care. Our basketball guys do, knee prevention routine. We've got lower back stuff. So, the summertime is kind of like a full Monty. But man, it's hard sometimes looking at a program going, we got to do so much more than this. But that's why having a staff is really good, because we hold each other accountable to go, no, we're just going to do what matters and be really good at what counts.
That is something I've struggled with through the years, but I've learned how important it is. You can't keep them here all day. They may want to stay all day, and that's their choice, but I don't want the workout to take all day.
Yeah, and they say simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, and easier said than done in training and in life and in sports and everything. But try to keep things, man, as simple as possible. Like our 3 week mini cycles, it's the same exercise, the same reps, the same percentages. Now the weights might change, like we talked about, but everything is pretty much the same for 3 weeks. And we just, like I said, we're trying to use simplicity as a guiding light in what we do. But easier said than done sometimes.
Well, Coach, I know I caught you in a window between games. I appreciate you sitting down and taking some time to do this. It was really great. I mean, I didn't even use that many of my notes. You were giving so much good stuff that we were able to elaborate on. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And if any coaches want to reach out and chat or have questions about what we do, I'm an open book, man. So please reach out and love to talk.
Well, thank you, and I hope the rest of your day goes great.
Yeah, thanks.